find ourselves caught up in the same current, in the continuation of the same fight, and we thank God. That we are being persecuted is obvious. How could we not be persecuted? We are the only ones to be excommunicated. No one else is. We are the only ones being persecuted, even in material matters. For example, our Swiss colleagues, Swiss priests of the SSPX, are being obliged again to do their military service. That is persecution by the Swiss government. In France, they're persecuting the Society's French district by blocking legacies from being handed over to the district. And this is in the attempt to stifle us by cutting off our income. This is persecution of such a kind as history is full of. It is merely continuing, and God works his way around it. Normally, our French district should have been stifled, and we should have had to shut down our schools, to close down all the institutions which cost us money. But that situation has now gone on for over 2 years, and Providence has allowed for our benefactors to be generous and for the funds to come in, so we've been able to continue despite this wicked persecution. Wicked because the law, the state of the law, is on our side. But there is a letter to the French minister from Cardinal Lustiger asking him to block our legacies, and this letter did not come out of nowhere. It was written under the influence of Monsignor Pearl. It is he, the mind behind it. He was all smiles when he came on the official visitation of the Society in 1987, but he was the evil genius of that visitation. He thought he had us where he wanted when he cut off our funds. So we must not worry, for when we look behind us, we are still not as unfortunate as those Catholics who were expropriated, driven out of their properties at the beginning of this century, who found themselves out on the street with nothing. That may happen to us one day. I do not look forward to it, but the more we expand, the more we will arouse jealousy on the part of all those who do not care for us. But we must count on the good Lord. We must count on the grace of God. What is going to happen? I do not know. Perhaps the coming of Elias. I was just reading this morning in Holy Scripture. Elias will return and put everything back in place. Et omnia restitut is the Latin who put everything back in place. He will restore all things. Goodness gracious, says the Archbishop, let him come straight away. I don't know. But humanly speaking, there's no chance of agreement between Rome and ourselves at the moment. But Rome, it was still the stick. Now Rome changes to the carrot, and then we think there's a chance of an agreement. But it isn't, because Rome is not changing its doctrine. It's a problem of doctrine, not a problem of carrot and stick. The Romans are going to abandon their false doctrine. Someone was saying to me yesterday, but what if Rome accepted your bishops and then you were completely exempted from the other bishops' jurisdiction? In other words, what if Rome offered you a sweetie pie solution? Answer: firstly, the Romans are a long way right now from accepting any such thing, and then let them first make us such an offer, and then we'll think about it. But I don't think they're anywhere near making us such an offer. What has been up till now, the difficulty has been precisely they're giving us a traditionalist bishop. They did not want to. It had to be, according to the Romans, a bishop according to the profile laid down by the Holy See. Profile, you see what that means. It's impossible. They knew very well that by giving us a traditional bishop, they would be setting up a traditionalist citadel able to continue. That they did not want. Nor have they given a bishop to St. Peter's. When St. Peter's say they signed the same protocol at the founding of St. Peter's as we did in May 1988, it's not true. Because in our protocol of May 1988, there was one bishop and 2 members of the Roman Commission, of which their protocol had neither. So they did not sign the same protocol as we did, although they pretended they did. Rome took advantage of drawing up a new protocol to remove those 2 concessions. At all costs, they wanted to avoid giving the bishop away. And so we had to do what we did in June 1988. On the bright side, and this is the end. In any case, I am happy to be able to encourage you and congratulate you on the work you are doing. The complaints now are rare, and how many people write to me their gratitude for the work of the priests of the SSPX. For them, the SSPX is their life. They have rediscovered the life they wanted, the way of the faith, the family, the spirit they need, the desire for Christian education, all these schools, together with all that our sisters and fathers are doing, and all our friends who work together to continue tradition. All that is marvellous, given the age in which we're living. The people are truly grateful, they're deeply grateful. And so carry on the work and organise. I hope that little by little our various communities will be able to increase in numbers so as to provide more and more mutual support for you all, moral and physical, so that you can maintain your present fervour. I wish to thank all the superiors for their zeal and devotion. I truly thank with the good Lord, I truly think the good Lord has chosen the society and has wanted the society. In November we reached the society's 20th anniversary, and I am intimately convinced that it is the society which represents what the good Lord wants, to continue and maintain the faith, to maintain the truth of the church, maintain what can still be saved in the church, thanks to the bishops grouped around the Superior General, playing their indispensable part of guardians of the faith, preachers of the faith, giving the grace of the priesthood, the grace of confirmation, things that are irreplaceable and absolutely necessary. So all of that is highly consoling. I think we should thank God, and we should enable it to carry on, so that one day people are forced to recognise that although the visitation of 1987 bore little fruit, yet it showed that we were there and that good was being done by the society, even if the Romans did not wish to say so explicitly outside of our circles after their visitation. That was before the consecrations. The deal was that the Romans would be able to go all over the world, and they were admitted in, Roman visitors were admitted into all houses of the society to check what the society was up to, and then go back and report to Rome. And they visited lots of houses, and they said, this is good work, this is good work, this is good work. And then they got back to Rome and then said, it's bad work, bad work, bad work. The Archbishop said, what can you do with people like that? When they got back to Rome, they came back under the Roman pressure, and they could not go on approving of what the society does the moment they got back to Rome. However, one day they will be obliged to recognise that the society represents a spiritual force and a strength of the faith which is irreplaceable, and which they will have, I hope, the joy and the satisfaction to make use of, but when they have come back also to the traditional faith. Let us pray to the Blessed Virgin, let us ask Our Lady of Fatima for all our intentions on all the pilgrimages we make in various countries, that she may come to the aid of the society, that it may have numerous vocations. Obviously we would like to have some more vocations. Our seminaries are not filled. We would like them to be filled. However, with the grace of God it will come. So once more, thank you, and please pray for me that I die a good and holy death, because I think that's all that I still have to do. So, that's the Archbishop. You can see his spirit, and you can see, there's a basic humility there. He's not setting himself up as bee's knees or the gas whiskers or anything like that. He's not boasting about the society at all. Any questions before we leave that particular conference of the Archbishop? Yes.
What do you think the Archbishop meant when he said complaints now are rare?
Well, the people are not writing to him to complain about the way his priests are behaving. So, he's not getting so many complaints as maybe he did.
There were complaints before.
There were complaints before, yes. Yes. People used to say, I can remember once saying, your priests are so young. He said, what can I do? All the old ones leave me. I said, well, you have to do what you can with what you've got. And, that's what he did. We have to do with the bishop Philip we have. Bishop visited Immensum to talk and discuss in April, I think it was. And Bishop Tissi said he prays about what he's doing. He believes in what he's doing. So, I think he's misguided. I think he's seriously misguided. But, it's understandable, because he's wanting to go the way of so many others before him. It's wrong, but there it is. Any other questions? Right there.
My Lord, is there any possible outcome that would lead to priests within the society having this fascination with Concilia Rome being motivated to leave the society without taking the society with them, as it were? Is there any possibility that most favourable of outcomes could actually arise, whereby the society would be purified doctrinally, yet not destroyed?
I understand. That if the devil has anything to do with it, no. Because what the devil is telling these people is that they must control the society, that the society is a very good thing, it's done great work, it's the legacy of the Archbishop, and we must continue the work of the Archbishop by being open to Rome and by welcoming Rome, like the Archbishop himself did up until the consecrations. The Archbishop was always trying to get back with the official church, and that's what we should do. And we must not leave the society in the hands of all of these retrogrades and nasty people who want to spit in Rome's face. You get the scenario. That's what the devil is telling them, and therefore, for them, it's a matter of honour and a matter of duty to take the society with them, take the whole, as much of the society as possible, except for a few retrogrades and unconvertible retrogrades and neo-Nazis. Those we can leave behind. But the rest, as many as possible, we must bring with us back towards Rome and back in with Rome, because if only we get back into Rome, we'll be able to convert Rome and change the whole situation of the church. It's
shocking how sincerely they believe in the cause. They really are. They're not duplicitous. They really wholeheartedly believe in this.
That's what I think Bishop Tissi says about Bishop Foley. Yes.
And the fact that so many of them believe in the possibility of a conversion of Rome through their own.
You may remember that in Bishop Foley, in his letter answering the letter of the three bishops, you remember he said he accused the three bishops of being unreal and being not unsupernatural. He accused of lack of reality, a lack of realism, and a lack of supernatural. He's convinced he's in reality. He goes down to Rome and he sees little details here of return tradition, a desire for tradition. He puts it all together, and in his own mind it amounts to a real movement in Rome back towards tradition. He's leaving out of account the Freemasons and the fact that they are firmly and deeply lodged inside the Vatican. And, they're not going to roll over and play dead. They've taken hundreds of years to infiltrate the church, to infiltrate the Vatican, to get their hands on the levers of power. They're not going to give up. But somebody like Bishop Foley does not believe in conspiracies or doesn't take them really seriously. At one stage he did talk about Freemasonry inside the Vatican, but I don't think he still thinks that the Freemasons are very important inside the Vatican. I think he believes that, the Romans really do mean well, and it's not the Freemasons that are in control.
I think a lot of people, they have problem distinguishing between Freemasonry, which they read about in books, and then imagine that we're all walking around in Masonic regalia and secret handshakes and secret passwords and all the rest of it. But when they meet these people in real life, they wouldn't know them from Adam.
Yes.
So they can't distinguish them by what they believe.
Well, they don't know enough
They
about
have to be dressed up.
They don't know enough about Freemasonry.
I did actually get a Masonic handshake myself when I had a CV.
Yeah. There's the photograph of Benedict XVI shaking the hand with Bishop Foley, and that's apparently a Masonic handshake.
On the wrist. Or thumb over
the thumb, some folding somehow overall. I don't know. I don't know about these things, but some people say that was a Masonic handshake. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yes, Master Mason.
Master Mason could be Christian really.
How much influence does sort of national background have on the position of the society as it is? I mean, if say the majority of priests were Italian or the majority of priests were Japanese, I mean, to what extent do you think that affects?
Well, national background influences a good deal. I mean, the English are bloody minded, so they're always bloody minded. The Swiss tend to they negotiate and they want to be neutral. They want to arrange things always so that they stay out of the war or whatever. So there's an instinct of neutrality there. But they're not lacking in courage, but they have an instinct of neutrality, the Swiss German. The French, St. John of Arc said they're light but generous. Still will translate, léger mais généreux. They're not serious enough, but they are generous. So, you know, the French are sort of frivolous in a way. That was her description. You could describe the French in many ways. Archbishop Lefebvre was French, and there's a sensational. That's the French at their very best. At their worst, they're very nationalistic and narrow. At their best, they are completely international in the true sense, not in the Masonic sense of being international. So the Germans are again different. They're a driving force wherever they are, whatever they do. And the German contribution to the finances of the church is very important. German and America, to a great extent, finance the church, apparently. So the national character certainly is important, yes. It's not decisive, but it's very important. And anybody who pretends to be international and doesn't love his own country is probably not. God created the nations. God made the nations different, and God does not want national differences to be destroyed or wiped out. He doesn't want nationalistic wars. He doesn't want people to be so proud of their country that they despise other countries, but he does want people to love their own, to love their home, to love their own people, to love their own land. That's the fourth commandment. So to be true to to have characteristics of one's country is absolutely normal. It's the opposite which is not normal. And to love one's own country is absolutely normal. But it's not decisive. What is decisive is the faith.
And my Lord, on the diagram there, you write SSPX, 2 bishops going to the left.
No, I haven't written 2 bishops going to the left.
Yes, is that the said or something on the SSPX bishop?
No, those 2 bishops are Bishop de Galarettas and Archbishop Lefebvre. That's before this swing to the left. That's still on the straight and narrow. All right? That's Bishop de Galarettas, and Bishop Archbishop Lefebvre. Those are the 2 bishops, all right? So you've got that one wrong. If you're asking the question about Bishop de Galarettas, I've got here, I do have after all the text of it, I was afraid I didn't, but I have it here, it's excellent. It's in French, but I can read it in English, more or less. And maybe that's the next thing we'll have a look at. We'll have a look at 1 or 2 more answers of Archbishop Lefebvre, and then I think we'll go through Bishop de Galarettas because it's excellent. So that'll be the answer, which you're implicitly asking. Is it 2 against 2 against 3 against 1? That's what you're asking, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Exactly.
And I think
the question then is Bishop de Galarettas, and I will answer with that.
Okay.
Alan.
I forgot what I was going to say now. Old age. It'll come back to me.
All right. Anybody else? Anything? Okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I've remembered now.
Okay.
What does Bishop Fellay say, or the people who think like him, when
Yes.
you put texts like you've just read out to Archbishop Lefebvre?
Okay, that's a good question. The answer is that the Archbishop said things in one going one way and going the other. Because, like all Catholics ever since Vatican II, he's torn between truth and authority. There's the truth of the faith on one side, and then there's this crazy Rome on the other. But the Romans are the authorities of the church. Even though they've got these crazy ideas, they're still the authorities of the church. There isn't another pope. There aren't other cardinals. These are the cardinals and the pope and the bishops. And so the Archbishop never lost his sense of these officials being the officials of the church, even though they're crazy. And therefore, the Archbishop always wanted to not be cut off, condemned, and slammed by these church authorities, even though they're crazy, because they're still the authorities. So he was torn. He went towards them because they're authorities, he pushed away by their nonsense. Back towards, the Archbishop went backwards and forwards to quite an extent, as I say, until 1988. Then his mind cleared, and then he talks about the church authorities in the way that you've heard, and it's clear that there's nothing to be done with these people. But until then, right up to the last moment, he hoped that something could be done with them. And therefore, if you had Bishop Philip here and now, he would give you all of those quotes of the Archbishop in the other direction. The Archbishop saying that he wanted to come to some kind of understanding, if he possibly could, with the Roman authorities. So there are those quotes. I don't think that, and what's behind them is that right up until the consecrations, right up until May, he still hoped against hope that Rome would behave itself, that Rome would look after tradition, that Rome would do something to help the society, to approve of the society, to look after the society. He hoped and hoped and hoped, because it would have meant so much if the mainstream church had given its backing and approval, or some kind of backing and approval, to the society. Therefore he strove for it, even though they're nuts. But what happened in May was that when he was in direct contact with Cardinal Ratzinger and negotiating for a bishop, negotiating for some help of Rome to ensure the survival of the society, because he was soon going to die, and he died in fact 2.5 years later. Since he knew that death was coming, he could not leave this abandon the society. He had to do something for it. So he went to the very, very limit in negotiating with the Romans. And still the Romans said no. The Romans said, no, you can't have a bishop, you can't. So then the Archbishop said, okay, that's it. That's it. From now on, it's no longer diplomacy. From now on, it's doctrine. And there's a famous quote when he says, if the Romans want to pick up contact with us again, suggesting that it's not for the society to try to contact Rome again. And that's exactly what happened. With conferences like the one I just read to you, the society didn't go back to Rome. For 12 years, it stayed away from Rome. And it flourished, because the Romans are crazy. But the Romans, after seeing from the Jubilee that the stick was not working, that the excommunications had not finished off the society, the excommunications had in anything made the society flourish, then the Romans said, now we've got to start the carrot. And they started the carrot. And the carrot's been for them much more efficacious than the stick. So the Romans are still and always working against the society, but the Archbishop understood that. And from the consecrations onwards, you get no more quotations about wanting to go with the society. So what people who are against an agreement, a practical agreement, say is, look at the quotes. There are quotes like that of the Archbishop before, and there's a quote of 1884 where the Archbishop says, there's nothing to be done with these people. And I'll read you this one, because it answers exactly this question. A question, why the consecrations? Question, perhaps this is the question being set to the Archbishop by his, in 1989, a year before the other one that I read to you. Perhaps it would be good to recall why and for what purpose you took the grave decision to consecrate bishops when you knew at the time that it would cause a violent reaction on the part of Rome. You accepted to run the risk of being excommunicated, of being dismissed as schismatic, because you wished to guarantee by these consecrations that the priesthood and the sacraments would continue to be handed on. Archbishop Lefebvre. It's a long answer, but it answers directly this question. Yes, obviously it was a decision that had to be prepared. The decision was not taken from one day to the next. For several years already, I had been trying to get Rome to understand that as I was advancing in age, I had to ensure my succession. I had to ensure that someday someone would take my place. One can't have seminaries and seminarians without a bishop. The people, too, have need of a bishop to hand down the faith of the sacraments, especially the sacrament of confirmation. In Rome, they were very well aware of that fact. I alluded to it several times, and finally I did so in public. That was in the summer of 1987. No one in Rome can say that I took them by surprise, that they were caught unawares, or that I acted undercover. They were clearly warned several years in advance by letters and by recordings of my sermons, which they had in their hands, and by the letter which Bishop de Galarettas and myself had addressed to the Holy Father. I think that's 85. I think that is what actually caused a certain change in their attitude towards us. They were afraid of the episcopal consecrations, but they did not believe that I would actually do them. And then, on the 29th of June 1987, when I spoke about them in public, Cardinal Ratzinger was nevertheless a little upset. At Rome, they began to be afraid that I really would get consecrating bishops. And that is when they made the decision to be a little more open with regard to what we'd always been asking for. That is to say, the Mass, the sacraments, the pontifical services according to the 1962 Rite of John the 23rd. At that moment, it seemed that they would not make any demands upon us to go along with the Second Vatican Council. They made no mention of it, and they even alluded to the possibility of our having a bishop who would be my successor. Now, that was definitely a somewhat profound radical change on their part, and so the question arose to know what I should do. I went to Reichenbach to see the Superior General, that was Father Schmucke, and his assistants to ask them, what do you think? Should we accept the hand being offered us, or do we refuse it? For myself, personally, I told them, I have no confidence in them. 1987. I have no confidence. For years and years I've been mixing with these people. For years I've been seeing the way in which they act. I have no further confidence in them. However, I do not wish people within the society and in traditional circles to be able to say afterwards, you could easily have tried. It would have cost you nothing to enter into discussion and dialogue. That was the opinion of the Superior General and his assistants. They said, quote, you must take into consideration the offer which is being made and not neglect it. It's still worthwhile to talk with them, unquote. So the Archbishop's collaborators were a little softer than he was. They had more confidence and hope in Rome than he did. He's a wise old bird. He'd been dealing with Rome for years and years. He didn't have any confidence. At that moment, I accepted to see Cardinal Ratzinger, and I insisted strongly to him that someone should come and make a visitation of the society. I thought that such a visit would result in the benefits of maintaining tradition being made clear at the same time that its effects would be recognized. I thought that that could have strengthened our position at Rome, and that the request that I would make to obtain several bishops and a commission in Rome to defend tradition would have more chance of succeeding. Very soon, however, 87, we realized that we were not dealing with people who are honest. We were dealing with people who are not honest. Immediately after the visitation, which took place, as soon as Cardinal Gagnon and Monsignor Paul got back to Rome, we fell under their scorn. Cardinal Gagnon made declarations in the newspapers which were incredible. He's a good guy, Canadian, good guy. But he's under that fierce Masonic pressure in Rome. Possibly the system in Rome is that you don't make anybody a bishop that you haven't got something on. Either women, preferably boys, and money. One of those three. And when you've got something on them, you can afford to make them a bishop because then you can always put the pressure. You can always blackmail. They said that there was a cabinet in Cardinal Sodana's office with what he had on every single bishop in the world. That's what's said. Se non è vero ben trovato. If it's not true, it's in accordance with the truth, with what is true. It's in accordance with what is true. Even if it isn't true, it's in accordance with what is true. Cardinal Gagnon made declarations which were incredible. According to him, 80% of our people would leave us if I went ahead with episcopal consecrations. We were looking for recognition, Rome was looking for reconciliation, and for our recognizing our errors. Those who had made the visitation of the society's houses said that, after all, they had only seen the externals. That God alone sees what is in men's heart, and consequently the visit was worth no more than it was worth. You see the trickery? The way the Romans are weaseling around. They make the visitation, they see the good fruits, they get back to Rome, and they start weaseling to get out of it to say that they're good fruits. In brief, they were saying things which did not at all correspond to what they had done and said during the visit itself. That seemed unimaginable. Just because they got back to the Vatican and came back under Rome's evil influence, they adopted the mentality all over again, and they turned on us and scorned us once more. What can you do with people like that? Cardinal Gagnon is a good guy, but then he goes and does that. He goes back to Rome and, okay, he's under blackmail. I understand. Soon after that, I think he left Rome, was out of Rome. You can understand these evil men, and Satan, have got very considerable control, or almost total control. Well, then, what can you do with these people? The Archbishop concluded you can't do anything with them. That's when he went ahead with bishops. And it's by staying away from Rome for 12 years that the society flourished. Then the Romans changed tactics and the whole thing started up again. I nevertheless went to Rome for the conversations, but without any confidence in their success. I wrote at the beginning of the month of January to Father Olagnier, I am convinced that on the 30th of June I will be consecrating bishops. It will be the year of the consecration of bishops because I really have no confidence. Nevertheless, I wish to go as far as possible in order to show what goodwill we had. That is when they brought up the question of the council again, which we don't want to hear of. A formula for an agreement was found, which was at the very limits of what we could accept. That was the protocol. Then they granted us the Mass and the sacraments and the liturgical books, but concerning the Roman Commission of consecrating bishops, they did not want to accept our requests. All we could get was 2 members out of 7 on the Roman Commission, without the President, without the Vice President, and I obtained only 1 bishop where I was asking for 3. That was already virtually unacceptable. And when, even before signing, we asked when we would have this bishop, the answer was evasive or no. They didn't know. November, they didn't know. Christmas, they didn't know. It's impossible to get a date. That is when, after signing the protocol which paved the way for an agreement, I sat down and I thought. The accumulation of distrust and reticence impelled me to demand the nomination of a bishop for the 30th of June from amongst the 3 doses which I'd left at home on the 5th of May. Either that, or I would go ahead and consecrate. Faced with such a choice, Cardinal Ratzinger said, if that's how it is, the protocol is over. It's finished and there's no more protocol. You are breaking off relations. It's he who said it, not I. On the 20th of May, I wrote to the Holy Father telling him that I had signed the protocol, but that I was insistent upon having bishops and bishops on the 30th of June. But in fact, there was no way of coming to an agreement. While I was facing Cardinal Ratzinger with that alternative, and while he was saying that he would give us a bishop on the 15th of August, he was asking me for still more dossiers in order that the Holy See might choose a bishop who would meet the requirements laid down by the Vatican. Now, where was that going to lead us? The Archbishop presented 3 candidates of his choice. And Rome says, no, we need more so that we can choose a man of our choice. You know what that would mean. In fact, there was no way of coming to agreement. Realizing the impossibility of coming to an understanding, on the 2nd of June I wrote again to the Pope, it is useless to continue these conversations on context. We do not have the same purpose. You wish to bring us round to the Council in a reconciliation, and what we want is to be recognized as we are. We wish to continue tradition as we are doing. It was over. That was when I took the decision to give the press conference of the 15th of June, because I did not wish to act in secret. There can be no durable tradition without a traditional bishop. That is absolutely indispensable. That is why the Society of St. Peter and Le Barrow are in Wonderland, because they do not have traditional bishops. So you can see his mentality. He went as far as he could with Rome, and actually afterwards, on another occasion, he said, I think I went even too far. He once said in public, I went even too far. What they say is in America that you go the full 9 yards. He went the full 9 yards to come to an agreement with Rome. Rome said it wouldn't work, it wouldn't fly. They wouldn't give him a bishop, and when it was a date of consecrating a bishop, no, August, no, there was nobody in Rome. The autumn, well, that's not possible because we have the November, no, it's Christmas, no. They obviously weren't going to give a bishop. And so the Archbishop said, they have finally proved that they are not going to look after tradition. They finally proved that they're not looking after tradition. In that case, we've got to look after ourselves. So he wanted Pidocta, he gave right up to the last moment the full chance to Rome to behave itself. And that's where you get these quotes of his desire to understand with Rome, of his desire for recognition by Rome. That's where all these quotations come from. And that's the quotations now being used to say that we ought to go with Rome. But they're not the last word on the matter. And as I've said to you, from the consecrations onwards, there was no question again of the Archbishop encouraging relations or contacts with Rome. He then said, if they want to make contact with us, and this is the famous quote, if they want to make contact with us, then they must sign on to Pascendi, to the Silvers, to Quantacura, to Lamentabili. And if they don't want to backtrack on the essential matters of doctrine and the faith, then there's going to be no further contacts. And that's what, in my opinion, Bishop Lefebvre should have been saying to the Romans during all of this time. He should have been saying to them, and the doctrinal discussions showed the complete doctrinal blockage. At that point, Bishop Lefebvre should have said, forget it. We said, we agree, we want no practical agreement without a doctrinal agreement, because a practical agreement without doctrinal agreement is going nowhere. It's going, in fact, in the direction of reconciliation and compromise. So the Archbishop knew that it would be compromised. So he said there's going to be no. And that's what Bishop Lefebvre should have said, in my opinion. He should have said, since the doctrinal discussions have shown once again that there's a gulf between the doctrine of Rome, of Conciliar Rome, and the doctrine of the SSPX, then I'm sorry, there will be no more contacts, no more discussions, no more anything. But instead of that, he suddenly said, well, after all, we can make some practical agreement without a doctrinal agreement. And that's when this good priest I told you about said, I'm a soldier getting up every morning and going down on the battlefield and fighting for what I knew, this whole thing is what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting to hold straight against the whole world and the whole church going crazy. And then suddenly I'm told, after all, we can go with this church which is going with the modern world, it's not so bad after all. He says, where does that leave me? Who am I fighting for, and what's the fight all about? It's my orders have been changed overnight. What's going on? And the district superiors didn't have an answer. So, you know, that's what should have happened. In the line of 1988, in the line of the Archbishop of 1988, the society, but what Bishop Lefebvre argues is that Rome has changed. Rome is no longer conciliar in the same wicked sense. That's what he thinks. That's what he apparently sincerely thinks. There's the rub, says Hamlet. That's the point. Has Rome changed or has Rome not changed? If Rome had changed since 1988, you might argue for a practical agreement without a doctrine. Because if Rome has shifted on doctrine, if Rome was coming back to the real doctrine, then it would be a practical agreement with a doctrinal agreement. But there's still absolutely no doctrinal agreement. The very latest proposition of Rome, which was, I think, last week or a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a week or 2 weeks ago, the very last demand of Rome was that the society should accept the doctrine of the council. We're back to square one.
Crazy.
It is crazy.
Circle.
We're going round in circles. And, you know, in my opinion, Bishop Lefebvre should realise he's being run around in circles by these Roman foxes. I said back in 2000, I said they're foxes, wolves, and sharks. They are. They're controlled by the Masons are in control, and they're enemies of the faith. They're enemies of God. Some of them may be sincere. Some of them may be well-intentioned. God knows. But they're not the ones that are in control. Rome could have chosen 4 theologians who would be sympathetic with the society. Our theologians said that the 4 of them understood what the society was about. They understand this doctrinal position, but they absolutely don't accept it. Because the very foundations of their thinking are not objective. They're absolute subjectivists, and therefore, while they can imagine what this objective doctrine means, they absolutely reject it. And that's why they're planets apart. Planets apart. And that's how can you make a practical agreement with somebody else a planet at the other end of the galaxy? It's just not possible. So, well, we're nearly at a quarter past. Any other question on so far? Or on that speech of the Archbishop? All right. Well, it's too late to start. Maybe there's another answer here which I could start on, because there was another one I wanted. Yes, here we are. Question. Some people say yes, but Archbishop Lefebvre should have accepted an agreement with Rome, because once the Society of St. Pius X had been recognised and the suspensions lifted, the Archbishop would have been able to act in a more effective manner inside the church, whereas now he has put himself outside. That's the question. Reply. This is a doozy. Such things are easy to say. To stay inside the church or to put oneself inside the church, what does that mean? Firstly, what church are we talking about? If you mean the conciliar church, then we who have struggled against the council for 20 years, now 40 years, we have struggled against the council for 20 years because we want the Catholic Church. We would have to re-enter this conciliar church in order supposedly to make it Catholic. That is a complete illusion, said the Archbishop in 1989. That is what Bishop really hopes for. And those who think like him. They really hope to get back inside the church and then start making the church traditional. And the Archbishop says it's a complete illusion. And here's why. It is not the subjects that make the superiors, but the superiors who make the subjects. That's it. Right there. And the proof is what's going on inside the society right now. Bishop Lefebvre has had a huge influence on many priests and many laity to make them think that we can go back inside in Rome because he's the superior. He's moulding the society to think like he thinks, which is the most natural, normal thing in the world for him to do. It's the superiors that make the subjects and not the subjects that make the superiors. He's got now some subjects, some priests who are protesting against what he's saying, and he's got 3 bishops who are protesting against what he's saying. It has no effect because those are the subjects while he is the superior. He says, I am the superior, this is what the society must do, and this is what I'm going to make the society do. The superior makes the subjects and not the subjects make the superior. If the society goes back into the mainstream church, under church superiors, even if it's only the Pope, it's still under them, and they will mould the society and not the society mould the mainstream church. It's clear. He says elsewhere, it's another quote which I could find, he says elsewhere, to go back under the conciliar church is a sheer illusion. They have everything they need to strangle us, period. They have all the authority, period. Why do you want to go back into the church, mainstream church? Because they are the authorities. The authorities have the authority. If you put yourself under them, how are they going to use their authority to make you like them, to make you think like them, to make you obey them, to make you follow their line and not your own line? It's obvious. How can you put yourself under superiors who think differently and not expect them to try to change your way of thinking? And then the Archbishop adds, not only do superiors make the subjects of superiors, but they have everything they need to strangle us. And he goes on. Amongst the whole Roman Curia, amongst all the world's bishops who were progressives, I would have been completely swamped. I would have been able to do nothing. I could have protected neither the faithful nor the seminarians. Rome would have said to me, quote, all right, we'll give you such and such a bishop to carry out the ordinations, and your seminarians will have to accept the professors coming from such and such a diocese. And of course, the seminaries are the growing point of a society. That's where you form your future priests. And therefore, every bishop who's concerned about the church is concerned about the seminaries. And Rome is concerned about the seminaries. And therefore, if we came under Rome, one of the first things that would happen is that Rome would start imposing certain teachers inside the seminaries. And those teachers would not be traditional. They would be at least half modernist. So that the modernist ideas would get in amongst the trad seminarians, and before you know where you are, you'll have trad modernist priests. It would be over. The Archbishop says it would be over. So to accept professors coming from such and such a diocese, that's impossible. In the Society of St. Peter, they have professors coming from the Diocese of Augsburg. Who are these professors? What are they teaching? That's it. See, and that's a huge principle. And that's, if by the agreement you don't come under the conciliar authorities, then there's not really an agreement. We're still basically away from them. But if you combine with them, you're going to put yourself under them. You're not going to presume that you're going in above the Pope. You'll be under at least the Pope. The Pope will be consulting with his cardinals and congregations. The Pope will eventually say one day, all right, this is no longer dependent upon me, you're going to deal with this through my congregation. You go to the congregation which is swarming with modernists, but you put yourselves under them. Argument. But we could get back out again. If we found that it didn't work, we could get back out again. Once you went in, everybody, well, a lot of people would be throwing their hats in the air. The problem is over, the war is over, now we're happy, now we ever... And of course, for a while, the Romans would leave. The Romans would not immediately gobble us up. They took 10 years to gobble up the Society of St. Peter, but they gobbled it up. They took time. They replaced the superior that the St. Peter's wanted for itself, and they put in their man in place because they had the authority. Because the St. Peter's had given them the authority. The St. Peter's were priests of the society who, after the consecrations, went to Rome and said, "We aren't agreed with Archbishop Lefebvre. We agree with you. We want to be back with you. Let us come back with you." And the Romans said, "Oh, yes. Come into my parlour," said the spider to the fly. "No problem. Come in, come in." And they didn't immediately impose this and that and the other. But after a little while, the Romans imposed, Cardinal Castrian imposed, the Roman idea of the superior that Rome wanted. And there was nothing St. Peter's could do about it. They've handed over their own control to the Romans. If the Society of St. Vincent went in with the Romans, they would hand over control to the ultimate control to the Romans. And the Romans would use that ultimate control to make us follow the ideas of the council. It's as clear can be. That's why it doesn't make sense to put oneself under them. And if you don't put yourself under them, then there's no real agreement. How can you get around that? But Rome has changed. They wouldn't want us to force us towards the council. Well, then just a couple of weeks ago, they said exactly that. You're going to have to adopt it, you're going to have to accept the ideas of the council. Rome is bullying Bishop Lefebvre. It's caressing him and then bullying him. Alternately, carrot and stick. The poor man probably doesn't know where he is any longer. I mean, I don't know. I pity him very much because it's not an easy position to be in at all. But he's got himself into this position. He should never have been talking with Romans in the first place. And wise after the event, I now say, it was a mistake even to set the two preconditions for doctrinal discussions. The doctrinal discussions took place. They were meant to be a block if they didn't work out. They did not work out. They should have blocked. But then there's a number of priests in the society, led by Bishop Lefebvre, who say that doctrinal discussions, or Father Pfluger, the first assistant of the society, is now saying in public conferences, what he's now saying is the doctrinal decisions, the purpose of the doctrinal decisions was to show everybody where they are and what they think. In other words, the purpose of the doctrinal decision wasn't to arrive at some kind of agreement. It was to so that everybody knew where everybody stands. But once everybody knew where everybody stands, then the way is open for practical agreement. Father Pfluger is saying that in public. You know, it's just a complete change of mind on part of the society.
Do you think, my Lord, that having been used to the carrot for a number of years now,
yes,
there's quite a bit of fear about the return of the stick? There was that comment, wasn't there, about seeking to avoid an ecclesial rupture of pain?
Yes. I mean, the Romans have said, we've got a nice offer to make you, but if you don't accept it, we're going to excommunicate you. Honey bunch, I've got a lovely offer to make you, but I'm going to smash you to pieces if you don't accept. Is it really such a lovely offer when there's the stick? It's really such a nice carrot and there's the stick right behind it. I mean, come on. Use your common sense. These guys are not out for our good. Not at all. Michael.
What was Bishop Fellay's reaction, if you got to hear about it, from Father Lefebvre's warning about not accepting a deal or not making a deal under any circumstance?
Yes, that's the IBP, that's the Institute of the Good Shepherd. The Institute, because what happened recently, most people probably know, the Institute of the Good Shepherd told us, or let loose in public, a recent document of Rome. Rome had recently visited at the end of the statutory 5 years. Rome approved, saying that at the end of 5 years we'll think again. The 5 years are up since 2006. I think this was last year. And so the Romans came along and visited, and the Romans said to the IBP, you've got to start teaching and counselling your seminaries, you've got to get together with the local bishop, you've got to get together, you've got to be nicey with the local conciliarist and so on and so on. I think the answer of somebody like Bishop Lefebvre, I think the answer is, but that's only the IBP. The IBP have no bishops of their own, they've not got 500 priests, they're nothing like as strong as we are. we are strong and we will resist, and we won't forego concilia.
And Benedict has given us a guarantee. He's given me a personal guarantee.
Is it what he says?
Oh, I'm sure that would be it.
Yes, that's the
Like
line.
the IVP were given an official written guarantee.
That's it. That's it. But I mean, the guarantees are not worth the paper they're written on with these characters.
Exactly.
The end, for them, the end justifies the means, Christian.
Would this society be in such trouble if the Superior General was not a bishop and was just a priest?
I think the combination of Superior General with being both Superior General and Bishop gives him a prestige and a power which is dangerous. I do not know of the Archbishop saying there should be no bishop made Superior General. I don't think he said that. What he did say is that it doesn't matter if a layman is the Superior General. That's what he did say. That's why he didn't make Father Schmidberger a bishop. For 6 years, for 6 years from the consecrations until the end of Father Schmidberger's term, Father Schmidberger was a priest in command of 4 bishops. And the Archbishop said, there's not a problem with that, because that's what they used to have in the Holy Ghost Fathers. In Africa, we had a number of bishops to make sure ordinations and confirmations all over the place, but the Superior General was a layman, was a priest. So that's not a problem. But I don't think the Archbishop ever said, I stand to be corrected, but I don't think he ever said that the Superior General mustn't be a bishop. But it's not wise. It may be not wise for the Superior General to be a bishop, because then he has both the superiorate and his episcopate, and it's a heady combination. It's a powerful combination, and it may have been too much for Bishop Foley. The power may have gone to his head. I don't know. God knows. I'm not judging, but it might be wise not to have a bishop as superior.